Hey, this is 42. This is going to be an old-fashioned response video to Morpheus Unplugged. I don't know if I've done a pure response video. Usually I'll just talk to people in the comments. But first I want to say, Morpheus, he's threatening to block me because I'll respond and I'm not responding to his misframe. I'm explaining why I cannot respond to the video. And he'll say, you're not watching the video. I watched this entire video, took notes, but I knew just by looking at the title that it was flawed because the title is, let me read it verbatim, Why I Choose No Black Agenda, No Vote. He did not explain that because he didn't explain how you're going to enforce an agenda by not voting. He doesn't seem to understand that the agenda does not come from outside. Now it can, but that's opinion. I wouldn't rely on that. The agenda is ADOS101.com. But then another problem with that, with the title and the frame, where you end up strawmanning, is if you are basically just taking one video from Tone, where he talks about voting down ballot, and not going into why he was voting. I mean, he gives more reasons in that one video. And Morpheus acknowledges this, but he doesn't address the other reasons. Because in total, ADOS has a game plan that is far more nuanced. And if you're listening to it, you can hear it from Tone, you can hear it from Yvette. I can give examples. My last video that I put up on my channel had examples coming from Yvette on why you would vote, for no better term, Democratic down, as opposed to just not showing up at all. And they give other reasons. The main thing is you're not addressing the fact that there already is an agenda. You saying no agenda, no vote. We already have an agenda. And more important than that, I think we should acknowledge the founders of ADOS because we didn't have an agenda since MLK. Now it's like, oh, and even more important than that is this isn't like some random 20 item. I think Black Lives Matter had something that they're not enforcing. They're not saying, hey, no agenda, no vote. And in that sense, we agree because voting down is largely no agenda, no vote, except for you're not acknowledging that we already have the agenda. So then it's like, now we have to find people who support the agenda. And there's a lot more nuance to that because it goes past. That's one thing. You're not acknowledging the agenda, but you're also not acknowledging that part of the agenda, part of Democratic down ballot, which is a lot posturing, is you have Project Takeover. You have a concerted call to take over the Urban League, the House of Representatives. So not only do you have an agenda saying, hey, this is what we want, which you didn't really have under Obama. Tone and Byron Allen came to Obama with something. They were one of the few people who, once Obama said, no, I'm not doing shit for black people. No, he gave the Kamala Harris line. Once they did that, they reacted, okay, it's time to sue the government. So we're not talking about the totality of it, which Tone and Yvette allude to in other videos, and that is to be the them. So it's not just, we're going to hope that they come to us with an agenda, because that's what Jason Black says. That we're just not going to vote, and we're just going to sit there drinking beer, and they're going to come to us and say, hey, Negroes, we got an agenda for you. We got Black Power agenda. ADOS is saying, we already have the agenda. If you follow it, you get our vote. Now, the high-profile candidates are not following it. The closest thing we have to someone who's following it is Marianne Williamson after, when she's at the ADOS conference, when Tone tells her that we can only accept billions as a down payment, like a 1% down payment. Now, I may have some issues with the founders of ADOS when it comes to something like wanting 15 trillion, that being what you're striving for, but not also trying to figure out a way to buy the Republicans. Now, I don't know what's going behind the scenes. I hope that Byron Allen will say, hey, look, I don't want to be on the forefront. I don't want to be the face of a reparations movement. I'm a billionaire, I can't be the face of a reparations movement, but I can, maybe put together a little money pool to buy some Republicans. You get the Republican Party and you get the social engineering, because that's why Marianne Williamson was at the conference. And she makes a good argument. She helps socially engineer the left. You get some Republicans, you socially engineer the right. All you got to do is break them off. And now you're moving the electorate. Another thing I want to say because I'm already kind of deep into it, but I want to back up for a second. When you say that that someone would have to logically debunk you, I don't know how to explain this. That is paper tiger straw man logic talk. Because if you're dealing with people, like you said, you voted for Obama. Tone never voted for Obama. Instead of backing up and saying, well, what did Tone know that I don't know about politics? You're saying you're going to pick one argument for voting down when he has a bunch. And if you look at Tone in totality, I won't even go there. Well, actually, I might. But anyhow, you're saying one argument instead of what is the full game plan? What did he know that I didn't know? So anybody can cast, because all debunking means is cast doubt. Anybody can cast doubt on that. That's easy. If you don't think people who knew that Obama was flawed can cast doubt on what you're saying using logic, which is just procedural thought, if and then, what do you think is more likely to happen? Then what you're doing is you're being a hardhead. You're setting yourself up to be some argumentative dude who really, had you done the homework, you couldn't have strawmanned voting down to one argument or two. It was very limited video. You can't microwave ADOS because there's a whole lot more to voting down than that. And Tone alludes to this all the time. And let me just get to that. Because one example, and this is where it's problematic for people to now say that the ADOS founders were co-opted by Democrats, especially considering how they're attacked by Democrats. But again, that goes to having a actual agenda. When you have an agenda, you don't just separate the differences from the Republicans and the Democrats. One of Morpheus's main argument was that they don't know, the founders of ADOS don't know white supremacy because they don't recognize how Republicans and Democrats are the same. I would argue that we all pretty much recognize how they are the same. The question is, do we recognize how they are different? Because one thing about having an agenda is ADOS separated Democrats. You have, the main people attacking ADOS are moderate / neoliberal Democrats, low key coming out against reparations. You want to cut or trim away that fat. These moderate to liberal Democrats who were the main people calling ADOS bots. So when you have an agenda, now you can discern who's flawed and who's not. If you don't have an agenda, I'd agree with you completely. Voting is a waste of time. So ADOS exposed the differences among Democrats. We're not even getting to Republicans. The Republican Party is a little bit crazier when it comes to the courts. Just the fact that Obama probably would have had a hands off, like, I'm not dealing with this 1865 thing, where Trump is actively amicus brief, let's get rid of this. And this is something that goes into the realms of power, because control of the media is control of messaging. It is the ability to lubricate laws that are passed within the people. If you look at the left end, not the neoliberal or the Jason Johnsons, not the Roland Martins. I'm talking about the really far left end of the Democratic Party. They want to spend $30 trillion on healthcare. They want to spend $20 trillion on a Green New Deal. So we're looking at it like you got some people like Mike Gravel who's like, hey, let's also include reparations.
Bro,
2020.
let me tell you something. I'm gonna let Yvette chime in. I'm not trying to cut you off. I think sometimes we use magic instead of politics. Trump is a small government guy. He just passed the largest, most regressive tax reform in the history of the nation. In order to pay for reparations, you need big government. This is a big government policy. So this idea of this other, we've created that as an alternative for the Democrats. Our best answer here is to make the Democrats responsible not only for us voting for them this time, for us voting for them every time in the last 5 elections. That's the answer. Voting for Trump is look, he's going to give you opportunity zones and nothing else.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
I wasn't saying to vote for Trump. I'm agnostic when it comes to politics. I'm not talking about voting for Trump. I'm saying our case is relevant regardless of who's in office. So shouldn't we bring it to everyone so that no matter who's in office, it's a relevant case?
You have to understand when their politics don't line up with reparations as well, though. You have to understand when they're based.
It's not really. It's a historical fact. So regardless of Democrat,
no, they need the money to pay for it, though, sir. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. Yvette, you want
Yvette to the same coffers to pay for it.
No, they don't. See, I don't think you understand what the tax reform that just did changed in terms of America's coffers and what it signals. No. This is a shift where they don't have enough to pay for basic programs going forward. They're going to not have enough for some Section 8 and different. We covered this over the last few years. I'm coming back to the core concept. Black people think, I can be conservative, but not understand what conservatives actually stand for, which is going against everything you need. Yvette, you want to chime in?
There was a great article about how big the deficit is now, thanks to all those tax cuts. So what happens now is that there is no money. There's no money for even basic government, much less reparations through Trump by what he's doing. Not only that, he doesn't believe in it. And Trump is in the midst of like a humongous scandal that could take his whole presidency out.
Marianne Williamson, though, like everybody's on code except for Tariq when it comes to the amount not being right, because everybody said that to her. But Tariq has this whole conspiracy thing, and that's another thing. I'm more interested in who's lying and who's not. Tariq, regardless of who started or may have agitated this, his response was bitch, shit, and to lie to black people. Let's call it like it is. And so is Jason Blacks. That's been their response. I can't suffer people who are trying to lie. Because by misleading, they're pushing people in the realm of make a stupid decision instead of a logical decision. Because that's something that I've heard. I could show a clip where Tone is talking about how liberals want to spend money. You know, that whereas Republicans, and this is dollars and cents, you can just look at the budgets. Republicans, you get a regressive tax to the point where Trump voters are pissed off, and you get a basically reparations for capitalism, like you had under Obama, but there was a recession, but worse, and there is no recession. Just a reverse Robin Hood giveaway, where far left Democrats are like, let's spend 30 trillion here, 20 trillion there. Well, what's 15 trillion on reparations if you're already spending? You already have people who are expanding the budget that you can work with. And you've already identified a bunch of fake liberals or liberal for everybody else but black people, Democrats, that you can vote against, which Yvette has said. You might find someone that you can vote against. And like she's also said, even if you find nobody that's worth voting for, nobody that you really want to vote against, you did your research, blah, 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 there are initiatives, laws, budget proposals. You know, they've been to pass a Blue Lives Matter law, you know, and you're not there to vote against that, which is just basically white supremacy trying to flex its muscle. And are these good white liberals going to check this without the black vote because black people are staying home? You know, a bill to arm school teachers in another state, not just Florida's dumbass, and you're staying home. We'll let the good white liberals handle business. And that's the thing. There's a lot of that not do anything and hope. And you can't talk about other people not understanding white supremacy. When Jason Black, the people were saying no agenda, no vote, you have to continue on with that. What they're basically saying is if we do nothing, they will come to us and they will lay all this out. Now contrast that with, hey, if there's nothing there, we have an agenda, but let's say nobody's supporting it, let's go and have a protest vote. Yvette has said this a bunch of times, and instead of putting the good reasons, the protest vote, which shows, hey, this is a huge voting block that you could have honored, but you lost because you didn't support the agenda, you're showing that we're active voters, and there's also the call to actually be on the ballot. There's calls to get into politics. Instead of highlighting that, you said that Yvette called people lazy. I don't know if she didn't, but I do know I heard Yvette on multiple occasions say that you will be seen as lazy. You will be seen as lazy because you will be seen as lazy. And if you don't want to take the time to see if there are any valid initiatives, because a lot of brothers, your child support is janky. We're saying write the damn laws to change it and then vote as a block to help. Because we got one of the main problems we have outside of not having reparations in the reparations capital of the world, outside of not having control of the media so you can send your message that, hey, this is bullshit. This is the reparation capital of the world. We should have reparations a long time ago. Instead, we're getting more human rights violations. We don't have control of the media. People can barely even talk about reparations until, recently. Barely would talk about it. It's basically like, a year goes by, Ta-Nehisi Coates, a year goes by. No, it wasn't on the world stage because we don't have control of the media. But another issue is family. Well, problems with our family, and you could point to Democrats and Republicans. Basically, Democrats get the blame for it, mostly. But if you really look at it, it's both parties. We have problems in the media, not the media, with our family that is tied to law. You're looking at some child support garnishments, and it's not looking right to you. You're not able to see your kids because the law sets it up so less time, more money. That is not going to change if you fold your arms and say, I'm going to hope that they come to us with a black agenda. So your family is still going to be janky based on the goddamn laws. Because it's not just that. There's a whole bunch of laws that moved around, changed before you had this a lot of this out of wedlock stuff, and to some extent that's just charge it to a game that's larger than politics, and it's not as bad as it seems. A lot of people are together and are with each other tight. They just ain't married for various reasons. But I don't think going forward you can really flip reparations hard if your family is where it is. There needs to be some improvement. And a lot of this stuff is a tight law. And you're telling people, no agenda, no vote, when you already have an agenda. And the call by Yvette is to add to the agenda. And your one example, Biden, nobody disagrees with. We wouldn't disagree if you said, for the most part, actually, we might disagree just because of the overall budget. But outside of the budget, if you said for the most part, Democrats and Republicans are too similar, or if you said in the realm of black power, 80% of them are just alike, wouldn't disagree. But here's the thing. If there is a call to get involved in politics, even if that call isn't being, if you don't have candidates who are like, ADOS, popping up all over the place, you want to practice. You want to get in good habits of seeing who's there and also being that protest block that you could have won with, but you ignored, which is something that Yvette said a whole bunch of times. And if you're not given this full picture of why to vote, period, not even, because what you're saying is no agenda, no vote, is not to show up at all. But the argument isn't just about voting down Dem, which Tone has outlined is largely attached to budget and who spends money. The argument is don't vote at all. But then it's like, and here's the thing. Let's say you're, Jason Black is right. The way it would work would be more like Kamala Harris saying, God damn, my candidacy ain't doing shit. So let me come to ADOS and really come with these reparation promises. if that happens, do you think Jason Black would be like, yeah, let's vote for Kamala Harris? Just a fair question. Because that is the more likely scenario than for what he says is going to happen is that Republicans are going to win, take over the government for years, and the Democratic Party is going to be sitting there like, damn, what we finna to do now? And then they're going to come to us with a black agenda. I think it's far more likely that you would have someone like Kamala Harris, or let's see, if Bernie was slipping instead of going up, maybe him, maybe even Warren, if she slips, it's more likely that it would be a president in a situation where I just want to win a primary. And then we'd have to stay on their ass if they actually got in the White House. Or if we didn't vote for him, like let's say Trump just becomes so unpopular that Bernie wins even without the black vote, we have to make it clear that we don't want all this poverty bullshit. All this poverty bullshit, take the portion for African Americans and put it into a reparations fund. We aren't with Bernie. His position on reparations moved Yvette Carnell outside of Bernie's support. And because we have an agenda. Once you have an agenda, it's a different ballgame. You know, when you become the them, it's a different ballgame. And there, like I said, there is a call. Let me kind of get into Project Takeover. Let me show you this. I just want to highlight this article. And this article is a trip. This was in the Inquirer. And it's a black woman who's trying to get into the NAACP. And she's like talking about how Jasmine is part of Project Takeover. And she says she's in the NAACP. Attended my first NAACP meeting, and I'm excited to work with them. I told them about the Comcast case and the relationship to Focus Features, and they canceled their private screening of Harriet. So this is kind of old news. You might have heard this. And they pulled up a list of all the people in the CBC that are funded by Comcast. There's a reason for that. You know, this isn't all just about Byron Allen to throw around all that money. They know what they're doing. This is a monopoly. There, Carnell, who operates the Breaking Down YouTube channel, called for a new political strategy, one that appears to contradict the outside disruptor image on which ADOS was built. Join local chapters of the NAACP and Urban League and go back to the churches, mosques, and religious organizations to push for social justice change. We have to stop staying at home and not getting involved as some kind of power play. I don't want to join the NAACP because they don't do nothing, Carnell said in a speech announcing Project Takeover. They don't do nothing because you ain't there. If you're going to talk about voting down, you have to realize this goes back to Tone when he constantly says gate up. ADOS here, gate up. And when the Times says that ADOS is insurgents and Jason Black is analyzing that, and I thought his analysis was great. But then Tariq is talking about how he's making the block hot. Tone is like, hey, it ain't ego. He wants the block to be hot. Because if you go for reparations, eventually the block's going to get hot. We are the insurgents. Gate up, Project Takeover. And if you're not adding that context, you're strawmanning. Because it's not like Tone just said, gate up, we here one time. ADOS is here, you know. He's saying that, and Tariq is looking at him like, you got Umar Sniff? No. Because the goal, these people have always been liberal Democrats. The goal was always Project Takeover. I've never heard them say just straight up don't vote. They say don't vote for people who don't support the agenda, don't vote for adamant racists and all that, but they have never said not to vote. That's been the neoliberals attacking them on that bullshit. So you got to look at the people and wonder how much, because Tariq said he don't understand how to deal with white supremacy. He said that. So why are you checking these people when they, at least with Tone, was ahead of you politically when it came to Obama? And their only answers is basically, the realistic one is that somebody like Kamala Harris would be like, damn, hey, we need to do some reparation shit. And in that sense, I wonder if they really agree with that. Or are they really expecting the government, the Republicans, as unpopular as Trump is, to just keep winning, and the Democratic Party to come back in like 2040 and say, hey, we sick of losing, but we got this cold ass black agenda. Like, you really think they gonna do that? They're not outlining how to get reparations. Yvette is talking about, in the last video, replace Nancy Pelosi, get rid of Chuck Schumer, grow as a voting bloc. It's your video is flawed from the premise is flawed. You're taking a narrow reason, not the entire reason and the entire rationale, because you're microwaving ADOS. You don't listen to them enough. Maybe they don't entertain you. But if you don't know the whole picture, that's why you get a lot of trolls who are like, this dude, they might not take the time to say it, but they're like, this dude is not being honest. Because I just heard a vet say that, show up to vote for dog catcher if there's nobody there. Show up as a protest vote. And I just heard her say, you will be seen as lazy, not you lazy for not voting. Now, I'm not saying she didn't say that. That sounds like something she would say, but I can say that in total, the message is you will be seen as lazy. They will see you as lazy. They just going to call you lazy. Y'all just lazy. So the main thing, so she might agree with that. I might agree that if you're too lazy to even research to see if there are people who support your agenda, if you're too lazy to actually write the bill or work with somebody, fund somebody who's writing the bill, fund somebody who will then, break bread, quid pro quo your agenda, then you're just lazy. And then I can't, I'm not saying she didn't say it, but it sounds suspect because I never heard her specifically say that. I only heard her say you will be seen as lazy. There's not just that aspect of straw manning. You're narrowing things down to tone. You're the leader of ADOS. You need to be clear. Is it voting surgical, voting down, or is it research voting? Like, you go into this whole thing where, look, the difference between, everybody has leaders. Obviously, like, the leaders of FBA are Jason Black, Tariq Nasheed. They're the leaders of that. And if you don't think they're the leaders, let Diamond and Silk show up to the conference and start saying, we need to vote for Trump, or let Roland Martin show up at the conference and say, we need to vote for Hillary. Let that happen, and you're going to see who the leaders are. The FBA, the brand is trademark. But the difference is they are clear that they aren't Messiah leaders. Now, I don't know what that means other than, like they aren't with some Heaven's Gate cult shit. But the closest thing I can say is Yvette describes it as, I can't do it all. And another thing, like, they've led. That's one of the differences. They've already led. Like that example with Project Takeover, this is someone taking their message and going with it. They've led the most successful reparations advocacy group in American history, at least since the Reconstruction. The most successful coming from black people reparations advocacy group. They also have decentralized leadership because they are able to be led. And that's something that we'll have to, we'll see in the future if they can maintain that. Because if people are saying, hey, we have somebody, like I'm going to talk to Q, I don't know, probably maybe even today, but if we have somebody that's running and they support the ADOS agenda and they aren't retweeting it, then there might be a problem with Yvette and Tone. Like that's their ability to be led. And that's different than a lot of leaders. But yeah, they are leaders as far as representing the message. if other people are representing the message better than them, they might say, hey, you know what, they're on code just as much as us. We're not made, we can't do everything. Everything we say isn't right. It's decentralized, so people will have leadership roles way on the other side of the country. If you want to be debunked logically, I've given everything I've said is debunk this logically, because you're reliant on not voting, not doing anything until someone comes to you with an agenda. That casts logical doubt on that. When I can look at Bernie Sanders or Mike Gravel's, how much money they want to spend compared to a Republican candidate that's always talking about shrinking the government. Logical doubt. Because that's all it is. So instead of relying on being debunked, I would say do your homework and argue from the other person's point of view, which would mean you would have to look at the larger picture. And if you do that, then you'll see why Tone was ahead of you on Obama. You'll see other reasons why it's a good idea to not restrain completely from government, but rather to take it over, in my opinion. Because right now, this is a narrow straw manning of what ADOS presents, because a lot of people, you don't listen. Like China Fox, I don't think she listens to ADOS at all. Just like straight up going to them and be like, okay, I'm going to do my research. Like Wu Zhao, credit to him like nobody else. ADOS was somewhat new. I think he might have heard of Yvette Carnell, but when he heard of ADOS and he saw how they were being attacked, he, instead of going with other people's message about them, he went and watched all their videos. So he's like, like the lawnmower man on ADOS. Like all of a sudden he's been zapped with all this information so he can see through the bullshit. Like I knew Tariq was lying or intentionally trying to deceive black people, which reduces him to entertainment. When he started talking about how ADOS was always a lineage and it's not a political movement, when it was a political movement long before it was a lineage. More than a year before. That's why if you look at this on my Facebook profile, look, I got Q in there. If you look at this, who's number one on reparations? Who has the highest on reparations? It's Tone and Yvette. I think Jason Black might be the person who's blocked right here. I think he might be up there too. But let's look at this. When did I do this? March 23rd, 2018. Yeah, Jason Black is up there in reparations. See, family, intangibles, media, temple system. That's taken over your institutions. That's taken over the church. So there's aspects of Project Takeover there. But you see who's number one on reparations? Tone. Not Holipsism. Holipsism is trying to shake the spot. But Tone and Yvette. And this was before the ADOS hashtag, which was late 2018. So if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. I could see right through what you're doing. I could see the flaws in what you're doing based on the title. But I watched the whole video. That's how I responded to everything, or the points of contention. One thing I didn't respond to though. You made the point that you could just call it Project Up Ballot because you need the president after something goes through Congress. That makes no sense at all. The president is one dude. If you can flip the Congress, you could have a president that ain't even about ADOS, and they might oh shoot, it could be a Republican, and he might be thinking, I have the opportunity to get the black vote or split the black vote, because now black people can actually vote completely discerning once we can say, hey, a Democratic Congress and a Republican president instituted reparations and we're all on the same page. That could happen, especially if you get like some moderate Republican who wants to break bread. And if we're putting money in the right direction with the Republican Party and with their part of Congress, do they really want to be the people that vetoed reparations in the reparations capital of the world? That's the thing. When you have an agenda, you separate who's really racist and who's not. And that's why I would say ADOS understands white supremacy a lot better than anybody who thinks that white supremacy, because they aren't getting your votes, is going to come to you with a black agenda that's better than the one you created.